You know that feeling, right? Like you're just drowning in information sometimes.
Absolutely, just streams and streams of it.
And what you really want is just the core stuff, the vital bits without all the noise.
The concentrated knowledge.
Exactly. And, well, that's what the deep dive is here for. It's kind of your shortcut to being really informed, getting those aha moments.
And this particular deep dive, it's really tailored for you, the learner. We know you value efficiency, getting those key insights quickly, understanding the big picture without getting totally bogged down.
Precisely. And today, wow, we've got some really compelling viewpoints to unpack.
We certainly do.
We're diving into two recent separate YouTube interviews. They feature Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Both were on the BNC Now channel, so we get to hear directly from them in their own words.
Right. So our mission today, it's pretty straightforward. Pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights from these quite lengthy conversations.
We want to help you understand where they stand right now on some major issues facing the U.S. Think of it like the Essential Digest version.
Okay, sounds good. Let's kick things off with Elon Musk. It's been quite a journey for him recently, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not that long ago, he was often seen pretty positively in the media, had support from different sides.
And now he's facing boycotts, a lot of criticism. It's a real shift.
It is. And Musk himself talks about this. He suggests he's facing retaliation. His words were for cleaning up waste and fraud.
So he thinks people who benefited from that waste are pushing back.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
That there's pushback because he disrupted things, financially speaking.
And this seems to have pushed him towards some pretty strong political positions. He's openly supporting Donald Trump now.
He is. He said he believes Trump needs to win to make America great and reach even greater heights. But the why behind it is really interesting.
Go on.
Well, he fears that if Trump doesn't win, there's a Democratic plan, as he sees it, to create a one-party state.
A one-party state. How?
Through mass illegal immigration and then naturalization. That's his core concern.
Wow. So it's not just about immigration numbers for him. He's alleging a specific strategy.
Exactly. For you, the learner, this is key. He's not saying the Biden administration is just, struggling with border control. He believes they're intentionally letting millions in.
With a long-term goal.
Yes. The goal, according to Musk, is to naturalize these individuals and permanently flip swing states towards the Democrats.
He even puts numbers on it, doesn't he? Something about swing state margins.
He does. He points out, look, swing states can flip on maybe 20,000, 30,000 votes.
Right.
So his argument is if you add, say, 200,000 new voters who he assumes will mostly vote Democrat, well, that fundamentally changes the political math, potentially for good.
That's a huge claim. And he says this concern wasn't overnight. It built up.
Yeah, he traces it back about 3 years. Started with what he called ridiculous censorship on Twitter, which is now X, of course.
Because his account gets so much interaction.
Exactly. He says that made him really sensitive to algorithmic biases, how the platform might push certain views, and also account suspensions he saw happening.
And that directly led to him buying Twitter.
That's his stated motivation, yes.
Yeah.
To create a, quote, white flag of free speech. He claims that since he took over, no one on the left has been suspended, and he's reinstated right-leaning accounts.
Now, that claim itself is pretty heavily debated, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's important for you, the learner, to know that many people see the situation on X very differently. But in this interview, his focus was on creating that open platform, free from what he saw as censorship.
Okay. But his concerns go beyond just online stuff. He mentioned seeing border-crossing live streams.
Right. After he felt he'd unlock censorship on Twitter, he says he started seeing these streams, and that prompted him to actually go down there.
To Eagle Pass, Texas?
Yes. And he reports seeing large numbers crossing without, apparent checks or vetting.
And that experience seems to have really affected him.
It appears so. He voiced real worry about the lack of vetting, specifically mentioning seeing people with what he described as gang tattoos being allowed in.
And this ties into his broader critique of how he sees the left handling crime.
It does. He argues that being, in his words, kind to criminals but cruel to victims isn't real compassion. He thinks letting untrustworthy people into society leads to, well, collapse. It's a very stark view.
Definitely forceful. And so all this, the online stuff, the border visit, his views on crime, it connects to him appearing publicly with Trump.
That's the link he draws, yes. Appearing with Trump in Pennsylvania back in October.
It really marks a big shift for him, personally, politically. He used to back Democrats. Yeah.
He mentioned supporting Obama, giving the maximum donation even. And he initially thought Biden would be sort of a mellow version of Obama?
But not anymore.
Far from it. He now calls the Biden administration one of the most radical and insane left-wing administrations ever. That's quite a departure.
And he's pretty blunt about Biden's leadership, too.
Very. Calls him a teleprompter president, essentially saying unelected people controlling the script are the real power.
It's interesting he brings up his past in South Africa.
Yeah, during apartheid, he talks about the nonstop propaganda
Right.
then and sees parallels now with how he feels both he and Trump are portrayed,
Yeah.
being called Nazis or monsters. That really frustrates him.
He also mentioned the power of just repeating things.
Yes, that if you repeat a lie often enough, even a big one, some people will start to believe it, especially if they mainly get their news from traditional media.
And he feels he's a target of this assassination by 1,000 cuts.
That's his term for it. He thinks the attacks are meant to undermine his influence, particularly when he starts looking into government spending, like at Dodge.
Right. And his relationship with Trump. How does he describe that?
He calls him a friend
Yeah.
and says they agree on a lot of basic things like getting rid of government waste and, just enforcing the laws already on the books. And he gives some pretty startling examples of that waste, doesn't he?
He does. Things like, 20 million deceased people still in Social Security databases.
Yeah, and some supposedly getting benefits, including one person listed as 360 years old.
That's hard to believe.
And unemployment for people with future birth dates, SBA loans to infants, federal workers getting unemployment. It's quite a list. For you, the learner, the sheer scale Musk is talking about, even if the exact numbers are up for debate, points to potentially huge systemic problems.
It really does. Which makes you wonder, how does he even find the time for all this digging while running SpaceX, Tesla, everything else?
He talks about wearing many hats.
Yeah.
Says he had an intense 3-month focus initially.
But he stays involved.
Apparently so, through direct interaction within his companies. And then there was that anecdote.
Oh, about sleeping on the couch?
Yeah. The world's richest man sleeping on a couch in his D.C. office because there wasn't proper accommodation. It really highlights how unusual his approach has been lately.
Absolutely wild. Okay, let's pivot now. Let's look at Donald Trump's perspective from his BNC Now interview. The setup was about his hypothetical first 100 days back in office.
That's right. The interviewer framed it around that, mentioning over 140 executive orders signed already, focusing on the border, the economy, foreign policy.
And Trump jumps right into border security.
Immediately. Makes the very bold claim he established the safest border in the history of the United States, a 99.999% security rate, he said.
Wow. And he contrasts that with Biden.
Sharply. Basically saying all that was needed was a change of president to get control back.
But then he raises issues with judges.
Yes, he complains about what he calls radical judges, blocking his efforts to remove people he deems dangerous murderers, extremists, mentally ill, who he says entered under Biden. He's frustrated that due process, those legal rights, are being applied to people who entered illegally.
That's a fundamental legal debate right there.
It really is. Whether entry status affects due process rights in removal cases.
Okay, shifting gears to the economy. There was some mixed news discussed. Good job numbers, but also an economic dip in Q1.
Right. And initially, Trump blamed economic problems on Biden. But when pressed about his first 100 days, he sort of takes partial ownership, especially regarding cutting spending.
He claimed he cut daily losses from trade.
Yeah, that $5-6 billion daily loss he attributes to unfair trade under Biden. He points to those big tariffs on China, 145%, as key to stopping that.
Tariffs being those taxes on imports.
Exactly. Designed to make imports pricier. He claims this cut a $1 trillion loss overall and says China now wants a new deal.
He also mentioned the stock market surge before he hypothetically took office, the Trump effect.
Yes, attributing the market gains to anticipation of his policies. And he points to falling oil and gas prices, too, claiming under $2 a gallon in many places, as proof things are improving.
But the interviewer pushed back, right, on him taking credit for good news but blaming Biden for bad news.
They did. Trump acknowledged past issues like inflation, but stressed the current improvements. Oil, gas, food, even eggs getting cheaper, he claims.
What about the tariffs making things more expensive? Did he address that?
He did defend them. Even mentioned a cabinet discussion where someone said, well, maybe kids will have fewer dolls, but they might cost a bit more.
Seriously, fewer dolls?
That was the example used. He justifies it by pointing to the trade deficit with China and saying we import too much unnecessary stuff anyway.
His argument is that energy savings outweigh other price increases.
That's his core point. He claims energy is like 60% of expenses, so lower gas prices are a much bigger deal then slightly pricier wagons or clothes.
But what about his promise of immediate price cuts generally?
He pivots back to the drop in gas prices mainly. He also mentions mortgage rates coming down, despite what he calls a very tough Federal Reserve. Any other price bumps he frames as just transitional pain for long-term gain.
Okay, and he made some huge claims about investment pouring in.
Massive. Nearly $9 trillion in just 2 months, he asserted. Mentioned commitments from Apple, Taiwan's biggest chip maker.
Car companies, too.
Yeah, building plants here, maybe moving from Mexico and Canada.
And the tariffs are the key to this, in his view. Leverage.
Exactly. He says that's why he wouldn't lift them right away. They're a crucial leverage to bring that investment home.
What about recession fears? Weren't those mentioned?
They were. Concerns from 4World, apparently. But Trump countered, saying others on 4World predict the greatest economy ever. He sees it as just a transition phase.
Did he guarantee success? Or the effectiveness of his team?
No, he explicitly said no one can guarantee 100% when asked about his defense secretary, for example. But he expressed strong confidence in the future economy. He also briefly repeated his claim the 2020 election was rigged.
Despite the court cases.
Despite, yes, over 60 failed court challenges. But his focus quickly shifted back to the present and future economy, dismissing recession talk.
There was also that bit about Amazon and Jeff Bezos.
Right. A report that Amazon might show tariff costs separately. Trump says he called Bezos, who then reportedly agreed not to.
And he's okay with publicly calling people out like that?
He framed it as calling out people he thinks are harming the country. A form of retaliation, maybe?
What about the Federal Reserve? He wants lower interest rates?
Yes, but he says the chair, Jerome Powell, isn't a fan of his. He didn't rule out replacing Powell, but not until 2026. He also mentioned some shifts in his national security team, Mike W. reassigned, maybe Stephen Miller getting a bigger role.
Okay, back to the border for a moment. He doubled down on it being safe.
Very safe, lowest crossing levels ever recorded, he claimed again. But he also referenced the ongoing national emergency declaration there, linking it to needing to deport large numbers.
There was a specific case mentioned, El Salvador.
Kim Aviorigo Garcia case.
Right.
Supreme Court ruling involved. Trump basically deferred to his attorney general on handling it, mentioned some incriminating audio, but also the right to a fair trial.
And foreign policy priorities.
Focused on Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Rwanda, Congo. Aiming to end conflicts, achieve peace.
Did immigration enforcement come up again, like wrongful detention?
He acknowledged that can happen, U.S. citizens getting wrongly detained by immigration authorities, but quickly pivoted back to the dangers he sees from illegal immigration.
What about dreamers? Any path to legalization?
Not a priority right now, he said. Blamed lack of democratic cooperation.
Okay. And the DoD layoffs. That connected to Musk.
Yes, the context was Musk's team supposedly finding $160 billion in waste, maybe up to $2 trillion. Trump seemed positive about Musk's efforts there, said he kept a strong team.
And threatening Harvard's tax status? Is that
Well,
serious?
He claims it's based on legal advice, and he's willing to pursue it, despite likely legal fights.
The interviewer asked about him directing the AG to review political opponents. How did he respond?
He denied giving direct orders, but did acknowledge reviews were happening.
How does that square with his message of unity to non-voters?
The interviewer pointed that out. Trump said his message was love and working together, but insisted the reviews were about ensuring honesty in government.
There were comparisons to authoritarian tactics, attacking institutions.
Yeah, the interviewer framed it that way. Attacks on public services, universities, law firms, media, like a dictator's playbook. Trump dismissed it, focusing on his election win and his supporters' views.
Did he agree opposition is part of democracy?
He did, and agreed people should be able to criticize without fear of retaliation.
But the reviews of critics.
Right, there's a tension there that the interviewer highlighted.
Okay, let's talk crypto. Trump 2028 coins.
Yeah, apparently their value surged after he offered dinner to top holders. Trump said he supports crypto generally, sees it as needed competition for China.
Did he profit personally?
He denied it. Pointed fingers at alleged insider trading by other politicians. Mentioned donating his presidential salary in the past.
Interesting. Foreign policy again, Ukraine. A mineral agreement.
Yeah. Yes. Presented as a sign of U.S. investment in Ukraine's future. He also talked about pushing for a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Claimed some progress with one side, mentioned the terrible human cost.
Any timeline for U.S. withdrawal?
No specific timeline, but he hinted a point might come where it's enough is enough.
What about sanctions on Russia, like Senator Graham's bill?
He said signing it would depend on Russia actually pursuing peace. He also complained Europe isn't paying nearly as much as the U.S. for Ukraine aid.
Did he think Russia's aims in Ukraine have changed?
He suggested Russia initially wanted all of Ukraine, and his involvement curbed that.
And communication between Biden and Putin?
Trump claimed Putin wasn't taking calls from European leaders
Okay.
and that Biden hadn't called Putin in 3 years.
Any red line for withdrawal?
Not specified, but he noted the underlying animosity between the leaders. No talk yet of pulling U.S. military or intelligence.
What was that about Canada? Annexation?
He repeated his joke about making Canada this 51st state, mentioned congratulating the new PM, but said annexation didn't come up in the call.
He thinks the U.S. subsidizes Canada.
By $200 billion a year, he claims, and says the U.S. doesn't really need Canada's resources.
But Greenland? He'd still consider force there.
He reiterated he wouldn't rule out force for Greenland for national security, contrasting it with Canada. He also hit Canada again for low NATO defense spending.
Okay, and Iran. What's his stance on their nuclear program?
Complete dismantling. He questioned why they'd even need civilian nuclear power given their oil. Mentioned recent sanctions, blamed the 2020 election for spoiling a potential deal he had lined up.
And Panama Canal. That came up?
Briefly, yeah. He sort of threw it in as something he forgot to mention earlier.
How does he frame all this foreign involvement for voters who want less of it?
He argues his actions are good for America. Claimed the Panama Canal was basically China-controlled.
What about the Trump 2028 hats being sold? Does he want a third term?
He acknowledged people want him to continue, but said he believes it's unconstitutional. His focus, he claims, is 4 great years, then transition to another Republican.
But some allies are pushing for a constitutional amendment.
He noted some are serious, but repeated he's not seeking it himself.
He mentioned a cognitive test.
Yes, claimed he aced it, contrasting himself with Biden.
Yeah.
Again, stressed his goal is 2 successful terms. Said there's no formal proposal for a third term from his end, despite suggestions from others.
And he feels he achieved a lot in those hypothetical 100 days.
More than any other president in that time, he believes.
What about the future of the Magier movement after him?
He thinks it's strong, will continue with leaders like Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance. Contrasted that with the Democratic Party.
Any hints about a successor?
Said it's early, but suggested his current VP, Ginny V, would likely be a top candidate, among others in the GOP.
So wrapping up this deep dive, a few big themes really stand out from these interviews, don't they?
Definitely. From Elon Musk, it's his deep concern about what he sees as democratic erosion, the potential for a one-party system. Right. And from Donald Trump, you get this clear vision for a potential second term focused on, well, what he claims is an already secure border, boosting the economy mainly through tariffs and investment deals, and a very assertive foreign policy.
We definitely heard some really striking details, too. That Musk sleeping on a couch story.
That really sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Highlights his unconventional approach. And those claims about government waste he's looking into, the sheer scale, is quite something.
Absolutely. And for you, the learner, hopefully this has given you a much clearer, more concentrated picture of where these two influential figures are coming from right now. Maybe more nuanced than you get from quick news hits.
It's about getting those crucial pieces to help you connect the dots.
We really hope you'll think about the implications of these views. Maybe dig deeper into some of the specific points that caught your attention.
Because it does leave you with a pretty big question, right?
Yeah.
If these perspectives, these visions and concerns we've discussed, were to really shape the future, what would the long-term impact actually be on American society, on its place in the world?
That's definitely something to chew on.